Hey everybody, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create. We're going to get started on page 4 and 5 in the Stamperia Imagine album. And I'm going to show you what I did here. So this is going to be a double pocket page, and I did something a little different. I don't usually do this. I've got two pockets, and one has a 1/2 inch gusset all the way around. So there'll be some depth and width to this pocket. It's going to be the deepest pocket. And then I made another pocket that's going to lay right on top without flanges. So it's going to be nice and snug. And I did this for two reasons. One, I want this pocket to be tight so that whatever I stick in there stays. And I wanted a little more volume to go into this one. And also because I didn't want to double stack my hinges down here. So I did it for two reasons. So the first thing I'm going to do is attach this pocket, this flat pocket, to the flange pocket, and then we'll apply the whole thing here. And then I'm going to go over how I cut my design paper for you guys. Okay, so I'm just laying it in side by side, just make sure it's the same width. And my small pocket is 2.5 by 8, 2.5 by 8, and there's no scores on this one. My larger pocket is 4.5 by 9, and you're going to score a 1/2 inch on 3 of the 4 sides. So that is the design for this page, and it's going to be the same. This is page 4. This is going to be the same for page 5. Okay. Had a little glue. I'm going to leave just a little opening at the top because I may want to slip my designer paper slightly behind it. I am not sure yet, but I'm going to give myself just a little room to do that. And if I don't need it, I can just tack it down at the very last minute. I want a very thin line of glue because I don't want to lose width or height in the pocket, or depth, I guess is. So that's a very thin line, and it's very close to the edge of the paper. Now we're just going to line it up on here, corner to corner, and press it into place. I'm just going to hold that for a second, make sure it's completely adhered. And this is your opportunity, because it's not installed yet. If you have anything hanging off the sides, you can trim it off before we install the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to use my bone folder to press it down. Okay, so now we have our first pocket. This will be the second pocket. And now this is all going to get installed right here on page 4. And because page 3 is done, it's a little bit bulky, so it might be tricky. So we may want to start, trying to decide if I want to start on one side or the other. And I'm not really sure. It actually looks like it's going to go down pretty smoothly. Okay, make sure your pockets are to the left and right. Yeah, there we go. So pockets are to the left and right. And again, everything we're doing for page 4, we're going to do on page 5. Okay. And this is a no magnet page. How about that? When do you see that from me? Hardly ever. I love me my magnets. Pockets are nice too. I think my biggest draw to magnets is you can always put something on top of it, like a photo. You don't have to, worry about a band or a ribbon or anything going across your photo. You can just put your photo there, and nobody has to even know there's a magnet there. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what I did with these papers. Well, before I do that, let me show you. So there's one pocket and there's another. There you go. Okay, so now what I did is I trimmed out a piece of paper for this panel. And this is, what I started with was 8 by 8 before I realized what I was going to do with the design. So I started with an 8 by 8, and then I made it a little bit narrower. So it's 7 7/8 by 8. 7 7/8 by 8. So the first thing you're going to want to do, if you're going to do a continuous design, image design like what I'm doing, is measure what you're going to need for the lowest pocket, the first pocket. So that's going to lay in just like that. So you have to remember the orientation of the paper going into the trimmer. You want to trim from the bottom toward the top. Then I figured out how much is left on top, which is this 1.5 inch strip. And then the last strip is going to go like this. So you have this continuous pattern. It'll have a slight brown break between each layer, but then you'll also wind up putting stuff inside your pockets. But I just kind of like this idea. It's critical that you cut from the bottom up, and then when you go to install your last piece, you want to dry fit it, and if it's too big, you're going to trim off the top. If you trim off the bottom, you're going to interrupt the image. So remember, trim from the bottom up. And let me get my contrast paper, which is right here, so you can see what I'm doing. Maybe, there we go. So this is going to go in just like so. Now, if I thought this needed to be trimmed down, I would not trim off this edge because it's going to interrupt the flow into this pattern. I'm going to trim off the bottom. But it looks like I got it right the first time, and that it's inked. So we're going to go ahead and lay it down. Maybe, if I can get, there it goes, if I can get my ink to flow. And it's a little tricky to do this until you've tried it a time or two. But, you know, worst case, if you don't want to deal with this kind of trimming, you just use, you know, 3 pieces of paper that coordinate. Which, I often do that anyways. If it was a graphic collection, I'd probably use 3 coordinating patterns instead of 1 continuous image. But having said that, the Stamperia, at least in this collection, this image is so, it's kind of busy, so it's very hard to put a coordinating piece with this unless it was something solid. Okay, so our first piece is in. So our second piece is going to lay right here. And see how the pattern is just continuing? Now I'm laying it in and I can tell there's no black border that's going to show. So I'm trying to decide what are my options. So I did not glue this bottom pocket all the way to the top, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it behind this pocket here so that 1/16 of an inch is exposed. Okay, so it's just going to be barely behind that pocket. Okay, so that's what the second layer is going to look like. And it looks like I've got everything measured good. And if you want it to look exactly like mine, I'll go ahead and tell you what the designer cut is. But like I said, I'm not going to put it in writing and I won't be held to it. This one is, this strip right here, the middle strip, is 1.5 inches. It's just ever so, there we go, slightly going underneath it. There we go, it's very close. So this one wound up being 1.5 inches. The one just below it wound up being, it's 2.5, 2 3/8. 2 3/8, and then 1.5. Okay, that's it. And then the last piece is going to go right here. And because we have a flange on this one, we can tuck it inside the pocket a little bit. Possibly, if I can get it. It's kind of bowed like this, so it's not wanting to go into the pocket. But I don't want to push it in too far because it interrupts the image. So I'm going to push it in, pull it back up, and see if the image looks good. If it doesn't, if there's too much of a break in the image, then what I would do is trim off the top and just keep moving it forward. Don't trim off the bottom, you'll interrupt your image. So I'm going to make that decision right now if I'm going to, and I think I'm going to trim, I'm going to trim a little off the top. Okay, I just took off about 1/16. Let's see how that looks. Turn it right side up. Oop. Right side up, we'll take a look at it. See, everything looks pretty continuous, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I think I'm good with that, so I'm going to quickly ink the edge and lay it down. And then we're going to repeat this process on the next page. And it's a different image, but we'll repeat the same process. I'm going to open those features up and get my page to lay down a little bit flatter before I start trying to lay this down. So I also left a little gap on the bottom that has no glue on it, and I'll tell you why as soon as I get it placed. If you have glue all the way to the bottom and you push it into your pocket and you push it too far, when you go to slide it back up, guess what? It leaves a trail of glue and it'll glue your pocket shut. So my kind of rule of thumb is on the edge that goes inside the pocket, leave myself, I don't know, 2 to 3/8 of an inch clear, so that if I have to slide it up 1/8 of an inch, I'm not creating a glue trail. Okay, so there we have it. And I've already matted a couple of things that I know are going to go in these pockets. So it is going to change the pattern, but it'll be fun when you take all your tags out and then you can see that you've left that you're left with a continuous pattern. So I've got some large and some small tags that are going to go inside these pockets and make for this interesting design. Okay, and for now we're going to leave these empty, but we'll come back to that as we're going through the embellishment phase. So that is page 4. So we're done with page 4. Okay, and now we're going to do page 5. Same process. You're going to start with a 4.5 by 9 and score on 3 sides. Okay, and that's going to be our deep pocket. And then you're going to do a 2.5 by 8 that's going to get applied directly to that pocket. So let's start with that. Oops, sorry. That's everything for the next page. So let me set that aside for the moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this pocket together. And remember, we just want a thin line of glue around 3 of the 4 sides. And I went a little too high because we might want to tuck slightly in behind that. And we can always come back and tack the edge down if we need to. Okay, there we go. Now we're just going to square it up. And once you lay it down, this is your chance. If there's anything hanging off the edges, you know, if you've got a little tag hanging off the edge, it's your chance to trim it before you put it into the book, which will be pretty easy to do outside the book and much more difficult to do in the book. Possible, but harder. Okay, now I'm going to show you what I mean. So I put this on, and you can see there's a little tag hanging off here. It's not that big of a deal, but it is likely to catch on something. So now that it's not in the book, I'm going to go ahead and take an opportunity to straighten that out. And I'm just going to do that with a simple pair of scissors. And just be careful not to cut the hinge on the other side. Easier said than done. One way is always easier than the other. Okay, now, see, it's nice and clean. Okay, make sure your orientation is correct. Your pocket is on the side to the left and right. And then we're going to apply this double pocket right here. And this may be all I get done today. We'll see. I can tape at night, which is nice, but I think I'm going to be busy this evening. All right. So now we're just looking to get this flush to the corners, left, right, and to the bottom. Okay, so that's done. So I'm going to take this whole thing and set it aside and show you which image I chose to go here. Actually, did I do the same image? That doesn't look right. Something's not right. I'm missing this piece. Oop, I need a minute. I gotta find the top piece. Okay, so I made a mistake. I actually thought these were two different images, but what it looks like is it's the same sheet, just different sections of the same sheet. So I don't think I want to do that side by side. So I'm gonna go look for something that coordinates better, and then I'll cut it down to the same size and we'll lay it into page 5. But there's a chance I might use this again, but I didn't realize that. But if you see, it's the same image. It's just in a different location on the sheet. So hang tight. I'm gonna see if I can't find something I like just as well. That's not quite so matchy. Okay, I found something that I like. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this process with you so you guys can get the gist of it. So we'll do this one more time. So again, we've got, I'm gonna pull in the page 5. We've got our lowest pocket, which is 2.5 by 8. And so what we're gonna need is a 2 3/8 by 7 7/8 for the bottom strip. And, oh, let me see, which one do I like better? This one has more green. Okay. Okay. That was so funny. When I was picking it, I didn't even see that. Okay, so what did I say? We're gonna cut 2 3/8 by 7 7/8. So the first thing we want to do is make it narrower so that each one of these is the same width. Instead of cutting them individually, we'll cut the sheet down to 7 7/8. Which apparently I already had done. So now we're going to come up from the bottom 2 3/8. Okay, so let's see how we did. So this is going to be 2 3/8 right here. And we look like we're right on. That looks good to me. So I'm going to ink it and lay it down. Okay, so now the next one, if you measure this, or if I measure this while you're with me, to the top of the second flap, it is, what is it? It's 1.5. So that's exactly 1.5. Is that what I did here? I actually did it slightly less than 1.5, but just a smidge. So now I'm going to pull this back in, and I know that I want 1.5 inches off the bottom of this, okay? And I'm going to go slightly less than 1.5, and I think it's probably going to be 1/32 left, just a sliver, because I'm going to slide this slightly behind here, and then I want a little gap at the top. So I'm going to go just under 1.5. Or is she? You know, I changed my mind. I'm gonna go 1.5. Let's just do it. Let's do it at 1.5. Okay, so there's my 1.5 inch strip. And it's gonna lay in right like that. Okay, and you can see there's no line, so I'm gonna slide it slightly behind this pocket like I did with the last one. And I just have to make sure it's lifted. And it is. And when I say lifted, I mean behind the brown cardstock. So you can see I left a little bit open. So I'll slide that paper in just ever so slightly and then glue this down completely. Let's ink it and lay it down. Okay, and I'm leaving a leading edge here, and I'm doing that because if I push it in and pull it out, I don't want there to be a glue trail. Because I'll glue my pocket shut. There we go. Yay! I think this is so pretty. It's so easy, and it just looks like it looks really difficult, and it's a very easy design aesthetic. I'm always impressed, even with myself, when I do one of these. This is a technique you can use also, you know, on your waterfalls. So, you know, once you pick an image, you know that each waterfall is going to drop down a 1/2 inch, or at least whatever the size of your hinges. I do 1/2 inch hinges. So then you just take it and you cut a 1/2 inch off the edge for each one of your waterfall pieces. And then when it lays down, you get a continuous image. So it's kind of neat. You just have to remember to go bottom up, not top down. Or at least that's been my experience. You can do it the other way around. I think it's harder, but I'm also left-handed and do everything backwards. So there you go. All right, so that is enough glue to hold that down. So that's done. So now we're on to our last piece, which is going to lay right here. And here it is. And that's upside down. There we go. So it looks like I need to take a little bit off the top, but not much. Okay, so again, we're going to put glue on the back, and we're going to leave this leading edge that goes into the pocket a little bit bare so that if we have to push it in and then pull it back out, we don't leave a trail. I have glued pockets closed. You can always open them, but it's not always pretty. And then what happens when you open it, even if you don't tear the designer paper laying on top, the cardstock gets a little torn, and then when you go to stick things in your pocket, it can get hung up on anything that's rough. So there you go. So we're just gonna dry fit it. Too hard to do this with glue on, so you want to check it out while it's clean. And there it is. There's our second one. So I'm really pleased with that. So let's go ahead and get some glue on it and get it laid down. I'm turning it around so I can see these two edges. Always move the paper to you. Don't move yourself to your paper. There we go. And again, we will stuff these full of all kinds of goodies. So you can see this nice, beautiful, continuous line even across these pockets because we trimmed it as a whole before we separated it into these pieces. So I'm happy with that. So that's page 4 and 5. Let's get page 4 back in here so you can get a look at it together. So there we go, side by side. Next time we get together, we'll be off onto page 6. Okay? Thanks, everybody. I'll be back soon.